Okay. Oh, actually, yeah. Someone send the merch in the just general channel or something or announcements. Okay. Uh, this week, crypto, everyone's favorite topic, or at least mine. So, just starting with the basics, crypto is just a subset of cryptology, which is split into cryptography and cryptanalysis. We're going to be focusing on cryptography just because that's what we're actually going to be using. We're not testing ciphers to see how, or crypto. Yeah, we're not going to be testing them, brute forcing them just to see whether they're safe or not. That's like not our deal. That's more math major, crypto type people. Um, Maybe we'll get into that someday, but we're focusing on cryptography and those symmetric, asymmetric, and protocol boxes. So, what is symmetric cipher? So, as you would guess, symmetric cipher works the same forwards and backwards. So, you have one key for encryption and decryption. So, the actual protocol or the actual cipher that works forward and backwards might be different, but you're using the same exact key. We'll get into asymmetric, which I think you could probably figure it out. In this, you have two types of ciphers: stream, which is bit by bit, and block, which is multiple blocks of data or bits of data at a time. And of course, you can convert any stream into a block using buffers, and any block into a stream using FIFOs, and just emulates it, makes it look nice, stuff like that. So right now, secure algorithms include AES, which is a block cipher. There is a lot of controversy on whether it is uh, a safe one. Generally believed, there are a lot safer ones, but it's very vulnerable to side channel attacks, which I don't think we'll get too into. But it's the general accepted standard for most, or at least in its current state, or just in the 128-bit state, not the safest, some will say. And then one-time pad, which is an unconditionally secure stream cipher. It's not used very often because you will need the number of bits that you're encrypting, uh, or you're going to need a key the same length as the number of bits that you're encrypting, and all those have to be unique. You can't use the same key again, which sucks because you're gonna have to find that back channel to like actually move it, or that secure channel to move it from one location to the next, so you can actually encrypt and decrypt and keep it secure. So with quantum computing, I forget what the exact attack is or what it's called, but you can theoretically uh, square root the key space. So you'll take 2 to the 128th and make it into 2 to the 64th, which is easily brute forceable in anyone's like computer today. Whereas 128 is going to take you an unknown amount of years. So quantum computing is a threat to most, unless you have that 120 or that 256 key space, which is going to lower it from a 2 to 256 bit key space to 2 to the 128th bit key space. So insecure algorithms, we have DES. This is just, there aren't actual any side channel attacks or proper ways of breaking it, like we kind of, like stuff like RC4, which is just insecure due to how it was built. DES was deemed insecure because its key length of 56 bits, or an effective key length of 56 bits, which resulted in it pretty much, you could crack it with your phone. Symmetric ciphers, the main reason that they're used is that they're really fast. Like when we talk about asymmetric ciphers, we're talking magnitudes faster, just because we don't have to do that computational. There's a bunch of stuff with like creating the key, linking the key, and like all that stuff in between that just makes symmetric ciphers way faster than asymmetric ciphers. And then the problem with symmetric ciphers forever is making sure that key is in two locations at once and it's secure throughout the whatchamacallit, from one location to the next. because it's pointless if you're going to have a key send it over and that key is being encrypted with a channel that's not secure. So you need a secure channel to send it over. And it kind of gets into Kirchhoff's principle, which basically says the only actually secure network or a secure cipher or secure crypto system should only be secure given that wow, I really messed that one up. Basically, if everything is known about a crypto system, it shouldn't matter as long as the key is secret. So you can know everything about how a cipher works as long as you have that secret key. It should be no less secure. So that's where we kind of get into, and that's where symmetric ciphers kind of fall down, is they can't really apply. It's harder to apply just because you do need that secure channel, which sometimes will involve bringing a briefcase across a continent. It sucks, but it's what it is. So just looking at symmetric ciphers again, it's that idea of using the same exact key. That same key is brought through a secure channel to the encryption and decryption process. And in the middle, you have your ciphertext, which is incoherent, and the really only good way to do it is brute force, or at least if you have a cipher that's only able to be brute forced, most cryptographers would say that you have a secure cipher, if that's the easiest way to break it. So then moving into the stream versus block ciphers. So stream ciphers are again bit by bit. You're using that mod 2 addition or just XOR. Cryptographers will always like to say mod 2. Common use or common types of stream ciphers, linear feedback shift registers. These are used in part to make linear feedback shift nonlinear feedback shift registers, or LFSRs and NLFSRs. LFSRs are a little bit too predictable, and when you move into NLFSRs, you're combining multiple LFSRs to create something a little bit more complex, so that's better. And then another kind of stream cipher could even be a pseudo-random generator, where all you have to do is provide a seed, and you get pseudo-random results that you're able to then encrypt the key, or encrypt something with. Encrypt and decrypt, given the same key, and everything's predictable, given that you know the key. And then we move into block ciphers. So this, we're gonna have a block size in the picture, it's just B, and you're taking in and giving out the same size, and you're getting some K, which is the key. There's plenty of operations that you can do now that you're not dealing bit by bit. This is like with any block ciphers, there's generally sets of confusion and diffusion steps. So stuff like mixing bits, substituting bytes, kind of extending a single bit over multiple bits and layering those makes a more secure cipher. And we see that entirely with block ciphers because you can't really do that with a single bit. And then another thing is each block of plain text is encrypted with the same exact key. There's not multiple keys for like block 1, block 2, whatever it is. It's the same exact key over and over again. And then we see AES, which is the block length, which is pretty much the standard standard for block ciphers, just because it's what NIST said. And it has blocks of 128, 192, not blocks, keys of 128, 192, or 256 bits, which just basically allows us to be more secure by having larger bits. And then in that comes larger rounds, or more rounds, just to be able to express that entire key space. So moving back into LFSRs, which we talked about, they generally look like this. You're not going to need to know this too much. There's definitely going to be like some crypto challenge at some point in a CTF. I wasn't mean enough to put this in the demos this week. But basically, they're nothing more than a circuit which can be expressed as a polynomial. Like you see, the P of X is the same as this one. You use they're basically one big loop with flip-flops, which basically take one bit stores it, and then every time a clock cycle hits, just moves it to the next one, and any reverse, like any feedback, just goes into the last block, creates the new bit that moves forward. So your initialization vector, as some of you might realize, whatever it is, your first cycle of the entire LFSR will result in your initialization vector. So any LFSR, you kind of want to just run it a couple times to make sure that your initialization vector isn't there. You're not going to be dealing with like LFSRs of order 3 like this. We'll get into it later, but there's a NLFSR that has like 3 Trivium. Has 3 LFSRs that use block or LFSRs of the order of like 90 something. I think it's around 90 each, if I'm not wrong. Something around there. So yeah. So those SNs in the general form, those again are the flip-flops. They just move bits forward. These are used in stream ciphers just to create a predictable output based on what your initialization vector is. And as some of you might notice, if you put zeros in all these, it's going to output a stream of always zeros. So you're not always going to get a maximum length output. So maximum length output is whatever order it is. So in here it's 3. So 2 to the 3rd minus 1. So there's 7 possible like initialization vectors that you can go through. And because this is maximum length, it will cycle through those, subtracting that 1 which will just ultimately always send zeros back to itself. And you can determine maximum length LFSR by converting it into its polynomial form, and as long as that polynomial is irreducible, you'll have a maximum length LFSR. And then we're not going to focus too much on this one. This is just what an LFSR looks like. So these are both the same. They're trivium. Someone actually, like in a conference, they're like, oh, we're just going to make one as fast as possible just for a joke. And not a joke, but just to show off that they could. And this turned out to be a very powerful one, and to this day, there's no real way to break it, or no known ways to break it, at least I believe so. But you can see on the left, you have those giant LFSRs that are all like being added together, creating a key stream, and ultimately, they're just added in different ways to make them nonlinear, whereas before they were just a straight line. Now we're having feedback throughout the different registers into different or between different LFSRs, stuff like that, and we create something a lot more complex. And again, just 2 different ways of representing them. Whenever you go through a round of Trivium, they call it a cycle just because you can display it in this circular fashion. So they just call it a cycle, stuff like that. Okay, so we hinted at it before, but asymmetric ciphers. This is people who took like, I think it was like, used to be CSEC 101, now it's like CSEC 140 or 141, something like that. So that key pair of public-private, you keep your private key and you send your public key out, and in order for anyone to send you something that's that makes sure is that only you can decode it, they encrypt it with your public key so you can decrypt it in your private. So that's what asymmetric ciphers are, using different keys for the encryption and decryption process. These keys are basically fundamentally inverses of each other. Anything encrypted with the private key can be decrypted with the public. Anything encrypted with the public key can be decrypted from the private. So this allows for much easier. Before, when we were talking about symmetric ciphers, we were saying how are we specifically going to send out our key so that it maintains so it has a secure channel. This doesn't have that problem because one of our keys is supposed to be public, and that one ensures that only we can read input encrypted with that public key. So, like we said, this guarantees confidentiality just because there's no secure channel to break into. There's strictly the private key that's trying to What am I thinking of? There's strictly the public key out there that you decrypt through your private. Yeah, and then just when you're creating them, the private key and public key are mathematically linked, but not at a way where you can determine a public key from a private or a private key from a public key. So that, again, is another important thing. You don't want a public key that can literally just define your private key. So examples of this are SSL, like HTTPS uses SSL or TLS certificates. Those certificates use asymmetric encryption. RSA, this is like one of the most popular. That's like with the big old numbers. You'll see something about that in the demos. And ECC, this is what's replacing, or people say is going to replace RSA. It takes a little bit more computing power, but the key length is much shorter and does not have to be as complex. So people are preferring it. Again, much slower than symmetric, but there's no issue with the key exchange. So we'll see hybrid crypto systems where, like even HTTPS, in order to create a secure channel between you and whatever server you're using, you'll first go through an asymmetric process where you're exchanging a key for a symmetric cipher so that you can ensure fast and secure transactions while only using asymmetric ciphers like once. And problem with this one is quantum computing. There's more than that focus of just, hey, it's going to do the square root of our key length. Quantum computing poses the risk to completely destroy asymmetric ciphers just because how they're mathematically used. So we just see another basic diagram again. Sender encrypts their plain text with their own public key. It's then secure throughout the channel. Encrypts the recipient, encrypts using the recipient's public key. Then it's completely encrypted, can only be decrypted by the recipient using their own private key. So then we get into cryptographic hashing. This is important with, like, we'll get a little bit more into, like, in terms of passwords, or it's a little bit different, but this is to make sure that nothing's changed. You'll get like checksums, stuff like that. In general, hashing, just a one-way transformation of data. You're taking a variable input that could be a single character, single bit, and it could go up to pretty much an infinite amount of bits, and it will always produce the same fixed length. So in terms of computer systems, everyone really likes knowing exactly the size of what an output is going to be. So that's always nice. Again, used for integrity. Just make sure that you are actually who you are, or something is what you say it is, just based on it's not changed in sending it, because you can encrypt a hash using public-private key, public-private key, just so that they know when they decrypt it, say, hey, this is the same exact hash, therefore this is based on that. Just some tools that you can use. Hash ID on Kali is really good. If two different inputs create the same output, the algorithm is considered insecure. So if you're ever at the, I know so the SHA, secure hashing algorithm, there was an original SHA-A, I think, or no, SHA-1, which at some point we found like a collision, which we considered it insecure, so we started with the SHA-2 family. I think we're now up to SHA-3, which isn't in use too much, but SHA-2 is like the SHA-5, 512 and 256 that we always hear about. And so anytime we see like a collision, we're basically going to say, hey, this is insecure. We need to either up the size of, or change the actual hashing algorithm, change the size of the digest, or something similar. So password hashing, it's very similar to cryptographic hashing, except we want to make this as slow as possible. So when we're hashing a password, we don't care like, hey, this is going to take 100 times as long, it's still going to be basically the same exact process for us. There's not going to be that much of a delay. When we're talking about someone cracking passwords, 100 times as long when it already takes like a couple days to hash crack a password, it's a significant difference. So our ultimate one is to make a slow algorithm so it's harder to brute force, or it takes longer to brute force. So then we also have salting, which basically means like when you use salting, you're adding something to the original password in order to make it a little bit different. And that's recorded in how the hash displays. So you know, hey, we got this password in, the hash uses this salt, add it the same way, and hash it again. So we're able to still figure out if one hash matches another. But this, again, makes it harder to break because you can't just run through all the passwords. You have to run through all the passwords and their specific salt. So if you have a couple salts, all with a couple hashes, all with different salts, you can't just run through the entire hash space, or I don't think that's the correct word. You can't run through the entire hash space just like normal using all your password attacks. You're gonna actually have to change it, multiplying it by how many different hashes or salts you have, just again making it harder. Examples: Scrypt. Scrypt's actually used in Dogecoin. No, pretty sure Scrypt is Dogecoin, the Litecoin family, all that type stuff. Argon 2, I'm not too sure about. I know that it's used generally the same. Downside of this is it takes it from, hey, this is a simple hashing algorithm that does X to Y, to now you need X with these all parameters in order to figure it out. Just some common crypto challenges. I'm sure everyone's heard of them, like the Caesar cipher, which there's 26 possible combinations that you can have because 26 characters, you're just altering each by some offset. So if you have ABC with an offset of 3, it's DEF. That, of course, is can't think of what it's called. But basically, frequency analysis. That's vulnerable to frequency analysis because forever, if you have a long enough cipher or a long enough ciphertext, you're going to see, hey, E takes up, I think, somewhere around like 30-40% of, that sounds wrong. But it always takes the most characters, or there's always going to be the most amount of characters. So if you see something like T has the same exact relative frequency to E, you're going to assume, hey, it's the change is the difference from T to E, and then we can just alter it, and we're good. Substitution takes it a little bit farther, and instead of doing a constant shift, you're going to say, hey, A is R, E is Q, and just completely mix them up. That's a little bit more secure, still insecure to frequency analysis. We have the Affine cipher, which is basically the Caesar cipher, except we're using modular inverses in the the 26 space, so that we can increase it by, I think, increase the size of the cipher, or the complexity of the cipher, by 13, because in 26 there's 13 modular inverses, I'm pretty sure. Basically, just making it a little bit more complex, you're going to take the form of your modular inverse, A times whatever character you have, and then plus some kind of offset, so that would be your Caesar cipher, B, and then the inverse would just be minus B, and then the modular inverse of your A. Encoding is different from encryption encoding is different from encryption because there is no hidden key. It just obfuscates it. So base 64 does like bit manipulation or something like that, or just cutting bits at different delimiters. So instead, if you have all ASCII characters which have bit sizes of 8, which really it's only 7, but it's actually 8 just in terms of the size they take. You could cut it at different sizes in order to make different bases. AES CBT padding problems, and RSA padding problems, bad parameters. We're not going to get into our demo with RSA is not any of that. It's just basic RSA. But again, those are just attacks on those common ciphers. So we got into this a little bit before. What's the difference between encoding, hashing, and encryption? So you're going to forever be asked this in whatever interview you have. I think I've gotten it like twice or something. And it's always a gimme as long as you know. I guess that can be considered for anything if you know it, but yeah, learn law. So encoding, just changing the format of the data. It can be decoded just by knowing whatever encoding format you used. Hashing, one-way transformation of data, so you can never reverse it. You can only brute force it, or use like a known lookup table. And then encryption, you're securing some kind of data with a key, so there's actual secret information besides the actual ciphertext. Again, symmetric and asymmetric encryption we talked about, and the data gets transformed, but the transformation cannot be reversed without the key, or the proper key, I should say. So classic cryptanalysis, this is kind of like on that other side on ways how to break it. Brute force, so you're writing just like you're putting as many inputs in as possible, hoping to get the correct output, just forever doing that. Known plain text attacks limit your actual complexity to the key space, but of course there's other ways to do that, and it gets harder if you don't know the plain text. For password cracking, word list, rainbow tables, just using common words. Like majority of the time when you have someone's password, it's not going to be some random bit that has no actual ASCII representation, or more than likely it's going to be some kind of word. So you can limit down possibilities, make it easier to brute force. Hashcat's used for that. Amazing, really amazing tool, very optimized. Frequency analysis, we talked about this with the affine substitution and Caesar cipher. Basically just looking at how many times, say, the most popular letter is used and checking against the ciphertext, and you can pretty much figure out what the difference is. And S-box bias, this is differential and linear cryptanalysis. I'm not too familiar with this all just because it's a little bit high up, but basically S-boxes are just like one-way conversions. And if there's some kind of bias in it, it chooses one over another. It's not exactly secure. Number theory attacks, again, just something out there, not really sure how to use them. And then finally, like Rumpkin, it's just an entire suite of tools. It's really cool if you just want to like break any kind of encoding or encryption, or just like try different stuff. And then we look at side channel attacks, which we talked about. Basically, this is completely ignoring anything about the algorithm and just seeing how it's implemented. So side channel attacks are just broad of breaking crypto without actually trying to look at I guess you are looking at the algorithm, but you're not trying to exploit it. You're trying to exploit how it was implemented, like I said before. So this can be stuff like power analysis, thermal analysis, memory analysis, or time analysis, knowing when these individual sections are going to go through so that you can actually tell what the key is as it's being used. Like we see, we're doing power analysis in that little photo, and you can see like kind of where the keys are just based on power consumption. So crypto uses in just normal security. Forever, we're going to hear email, Thunderbird, PGP keys, stuff like that. I think they now even do like some like hashing stuff with it. I might be wrong though. I'm tired. File integrity checking, again with the hashes. I don't know why specifically I said SHA-1 because that's technically deprecated. Or I put SHA-1, technically deprecated. Web, we talked about like certificates, HTTPS, TLS, SSL. Again, uses asymmetric encryption. And steganography, that is just a whole nother ballpark. There's plenty of ways that you can incorporate these crypto techniques into that, but there's a lot more because it's a lot more subjective and like you can actually see it compared to like these are a bunch of numbers, stuff like that. So covert communications. Cryptography doesn't always provide safe communications. Like we talked about, if you don't have a proper secure channel, there's really no use for symmetric encryption because there's no secure way to get that key over there for them to actually decrypt it. So you're either sending something just to nowhere, or you're sending it and it's basically in plain text. So covert communications, just like when we encrypt a message, we want to know it's encrypted. We want to know that it's not going to be broken easily. Nothing's going to raise suspicion. Crypto tries to change data to make it unreadable so that there's no actual bias based on the plain text put in. So you can't, like, there's a famous story where like someone would just listen to an open radio channel and it was just an encrypted stream cipher that the government was using, sending it off, and he began to hear just like the bias in it and was able to detect just on his own, because the guy was like in Alaska or something, just like bored out of his mind, would listen to the radio all the time. He began to actually hear the voice underneath it, and he eventually got to talk to them. It was proved that he could do that, and they figured out the bias in the algorithm and deprecated it. Yeah, it can get really complicated just with like CPU caching, video game patching, thermal readings, just like all those side channel attacks, even acoustic channels. Yeah, you'll learn all about this in one class or another. There's a lot to learn about it. Yeah. A lot of people for challenges and just like whatever they do like to make their own crypto. Not recommended unless like you want to make a CTF challenge and just want it to be as painful as ever. You're going to get a lot of people sad. You're going to get yelled at a lot, but always a fun time. So, moving on. Just some like general resources. Like I mentioned, Rumpkin. That's that like just giant like suite of different what's it called? Different tools. Literally just like absolutely anything for any type of encoding, encryption, and you can just put in whatever you want. Python cryptography. PyCrypto is an amazing module that you can pretty much use in anything. It's really good. CyberChef. Just on like the low level, I want to like experiment with this. CyberChef's always good. CryptoPals. I haven't used this a ton, but I've heard great things about it. And that one kid who's good at math. He's forever going to be the crypto god. So, any questions? I know that was a lot. That was dense. And I probably rambled. Rainbow table is just, it's, how do I say this the best way? It is predicting how people will create their passwords based on common practices. Like if you just even like region based, like someone lives in Buffalo, maybe you'll use common terminology there. Just be able to roll all phrases that they might use, anything that's predictable that into a single table, and you can either use it directly or can't think of the other word, but just like alter it in some way, mangle it, and either create new words, alterations on those words, or something similar. So it's just making personalized brute forces. Anyone else? Oh, is that a yawn or? Okay, cool. Okay, cool.
All right. Good job, Max. wrap it up. All right, do you want to talk about demos?
Oh, yeah. Forgot about that. Yeah, forgot I was tech lead. So in a couple seconds, I'll be releasing the challenges this week. Because it's crypto, we're not going to have any VMs. So you get to do everything just using text docs, or challenges are just going to be in text documents, and you get to just break them, figure out the key, all good and fun. Yeah, so those will be open. As always, you don't have to use it so much today, but ritsec.club/education. I'll put up the slides. There won't be any VM to download. I'll also be putting up last week's walkthrough, and flags.ritsec.club will have everything so that you can submit. It will also have the text files attached for each challenge, such and so forth. Cool.
All right, cool. It's demo time. Awesome. Thank you, Max. All right. That's education done. It is now demo time, so feel free to work on the demos. We will, eBoard people will walk around and attempt to help. Did you do the demo? Bye, stream. Bye-bye.